Welcome to episode 6 of the VSP Podcast. I'm Anthony Bernice, and today we're going to be joined by Tyler Carroll, who's not only a longtime friend, but now he works for the Texas Rangers as a scout here in the Northeast. We're excited to get going, talking to him about everything that he does. Not only is we're going to go over that, but we're also going to talk about our baseball summit here, which we're going to be hosting November 22nd, 9 a.m. So if you're interested in getting tickets, please visit our link in the bio. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So, how are we doing today, Tyler?
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a long time. Excited to get you on. I'll have your brother on hopefully in a few weeks. But I want to just talk to you about yourself. So why don't you tell the audience how you got started, what you're doing now, keep it easy and let's hear about it.
Yeah, sure. So obviously where we met was at Farmingdale State College. Went to school there, went for sport management. Out of school, ended up getting a job at this out in Bloomington, Minnesota with this company Inside Edge. They're kind of like a third-party scouting vendor. Did work with all 30 teams. Spent the 2016 season up there, and that off-season went to the winter meetings, interviewed with a bunch of clubs, and was lucky enough to get in on the ground floor with the Texas Rangers. Started out on their player development side for 2 years. Was at affiliates, was at our high A affiliate in 2017, and then worked out of our complex in Arizona in 2018 with a short detour up to Spokane, Washington with our short season club and the video coordinator advanced scouting role. 2019, they moved me down to the big leagues, so went down to Texas, helped out with our advanced scouting team, and then 2020 shifted over to the amateur side with the new position. So 2020, 2021, worked as our amateur video scout, so kind of covered the whole country, traveling with our technology and the Edgertronics and the high frame rate cameras, as well as, filing reports on the best 150, 200, players in the country on the amateur side that year. 2022, I moved again, moved over out to Atlanta, took over, became our area scout in Georgia and East Tennessee. Did that for 2 years, and then we had an opening up here in the Northeast, and came back to my roots and started to start scouting up here in the Northeast. So just completed my second draft up here in the Northeast, and just signed on for 2 more years. So I'll be start my third one here in the next.
Congrats, man. That's awesome. Two more years. We know that's important. But how did you get into scouting? Like, why wasn't a different sector, of like, I guess the front office or back office, whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, sure. So, I think getting into baseball is super competitive, right? And something I always knew I wanted to do was work in baseball and work on the player side of things, right? Like, with a sport management degree, a lot of people go a bunch of different directions. They may go towards tickets or sales or marketing or whatever it is. For me, that stuff was never really attractive. I always wanted to work on the player side of things. So, it was more or less, it was like, all right, how can I get in here, right? So, like, got in on the player development side as a video coordinator, which is pretty much, bottom of the totem pole and trying to claw your way up. And, as I just detailed in my journey, it was kind of, started in player development for a couple of years, worked on big league advance for a year, and then shifted over to amateur. And it was just kind of more or less just saying yes to every opportunity that came my way. Honestly, if you asked me 10 years ago, did I think I was going to be working on the amateur scouting side? Probably would have told you were crazy. But, it's kind of where the opportunities were. And, the more you do it, love my job right now. And, I don't really know if I'll shift over. I mean, to go and do something else, always open-minded, but kind of happy where I am right now. And it's been fun doing it.
Okay, awesome. I mean, so I mean, you and I have spoken a couple of times, and you always discuss, some of the people maybe you were involved with in drafting, or you've noticed, especially here on Long Island, and most of our listeners are, from Long Island. So I mean, obviously, I don't want you giving any future secrets, but talking about some of the past guys that you've been involved in drafting, like, what were you looking at, and how did you evaluate it? What was your process? What was the Tyler Carroll way?
Yeah, so it all kind of starts. The way the schedule works now with the draft, right? So the draft is in the middle of July. The summer circuit, as many of your athletes know, I mean, it starts pretty much when school ends, right? So around June. But so we'll start prepping for that class usually around June the year before. And it's just kind of going through the area code tryouts, the East Coast Pro tryouts, going to local summer events. On the high school side, spending summers up in Cape Cod for the go see the college players, the draft league, the various different collegiate summer leagues that are out there. And pretty much so through the summer and through the fall, where we'll continue. And, Jupiter's a huge event, coming in October, and going to see all the different scout days and everything. So what we try to create is our follow list, right? So it's pretty deep. I mean, I was going through mine today. I think I got 195 guys on there, and it's not just from this area; it's from all over the country. But it's just kind of identifying guys. All right, come springtime, who do we need to scout? Now, how do you get on that list? I'd say, it pretty much starts by the first thing you're going to see when you walk up, right, is physically what do they look like, right? You're looking at the frame, you're looking at the builds, just kind of gives you a basic snapshot of, all right, this is the canvas of what we're working with, right? And then, for the most part, a lot of these events, it's going through and, it's more of a workout type setting, right? We're going to have them run a 60. So I'll get a baseline on how fast they are. We're going to see them, on the infield or the outfield. We're going to see them throw. So we're going to have our arm strength. We're going to see them take BP. We're going to see what the raw power is, what the bat speed is. So all of that is kind of like the tools part of it, right? So we have the body, which you're going to identify the athlete, and the tools. And then you go from there, and probably the third piece of it is the skill portion. And that's more or less when we're going to watch you in the games, right? For hitters, how do you control your at-bats? Can you identify, off-speed pitches? And can you see a breaking ball? What do you do with two strikes? What do you do? Just kind of going through the skill portion of what makes baseball so hard, right? For pitchers on the mounds, we know you throw hard. Can you throw for a strike? Do you have any idea how do your pitches play in the box? Is there deception? Do hitters get a good look at it? All that stuff. So, you kind of piece it all together, and then come springtime, it's a pretty long, exhaustive list that you're going to work through, and the odds you're probably not going to get to everybody, right? Like we do our follow process. We have highs, mediums, and lows. The guys who are the lows, unless you're playing at a college that I'm going to run into, probably not going to see you, right? Mm-hmm. But the highs and the mediums, we're going to try to get looks on them all. And the way it'll work is, I put in my report. If I put a high enough grade on you, we're going to send somebody else in to come check them out. If they put a high enough grade on you, somebody else is going to come in, and it's a completely layered process. But yeah, so it's pretty much it's the physical portion, the tools, so to say, which is kind of more the talent side, and then the skills, and then what'll come up in the winter, I guess the piece I kind of skipped over, is the makeup side of things, right? So it's getting to know the person and, trying to figure out, baseball's really hard, right? It's not like, the NFL or the NBA where you get drafted and you go right into you're in the pros, but you're not going to the major, the top league. Yeah. Grinding through the minor leagues is hard. And the hardest part of my job is trying to figure out, all right, who's actually able to do this and who's able to actually withstand the grind and get through it, because, I mean, a bunch of Yankee fans have probably come here, right? I mean, Volpe was going through it for a good period there, right? And he's strong, and he broke through it. But sometimes those guys go 1 for 31 and they're punched out 17, 18 times in those 31 at bats. It doesn't always end well.
No,
so.
Definitely not. You brought up a couple of good points, if you want me talking about it. So you're talking about the tools, the physical, attributes. How often do you see somebody that showcases well, right? Like whether it's 60-yard dash, exit velo, things of that nature, they look good. 6'2", 6'3", solid 190, 195, and they don't necessarily show up that day, right? Maybe that they're not playing well in front of you. What would you say to those kids that, and you were just talking about Volpe is a perfect example. To ones that they may have days that they struggle, and not every game is necessarily their opportunity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, baseball's a game of failure, right? So I mean, more times than not, we're going to go there and we're going to see them fail. As I kind of just went, it's a collection of looks, right? So it's not only you have one bad day, it's not necessarily putting the nail in the coffin, right? Because you kind of go through it, right? Like we see. If you look the part, we know the talent's there. We're going to come back, right? Like one bad day, I've seen some of the best, guys in the country. I mean, Tamar Johnson was a guy who went 4th overall to the Pirates, back when I was in Georgia. And, I saw a game where he punched out 2 or 3 times, and it's like in a high school game against really bad competition. And it's like, all right, this guy's the most accomplished high school hitter, statistically that we've had in the last decade. And, he's going to a high school game and he's facing a guy throwing 60 miles an hour and he's swinging through it. And it's like, man, what am I supposed to do with this? But it's just, it's a collection of looks, right? And you got to trust your process. Guys are going to have bad days. It's going to happen. And it's more or less trying to, so it kind of gives you a look at 2 things, right? It's the more important thing is, all right, how do they handle it? Sometimes what we want to see is we want to see them fail. Yeah. Like we had a kid on Long Island this year who went 34th to the Tigers, right? Michael Oliveto, and great kid and great player, and we loved him, and we would have loved to make him a Ranger, but the Tigers got a really good one, and he had a ton of success this year. But there was a game, and I was there. I mean, I think he went 0 for 4 and might have punched out twice. And, I mean, sure, maybe some guys who were just parachuting in for a day, maybe you walk out of there and you say, this guy's going in the first round, But, I think, like, the amount of looks that you get on a guy, getting to know the kid and seeing how he bounced back the next game and, was back to who he was. I mean, that kind of gives you the confidence that, they're going to be able to bounce back and be able to, get through the grind of what is professional baseball.
Yeah. So if you're someone like an Oliveto who obviously performed really well, and he kind of came out of nowhere, as you and I were talking about earlier, but what would you say to some of these kids that are getting really good looks? Maybe, they got a few calls, they got some visits to high-end D1 schools, and they know they have a chance. What are a few tips that you would have for them, whether it's the day of a showcase, they're going to a visit, or whatever the case may be? What are a few tips you would have for them in order to be scouted the best?
Yeah, I mean, I would say number one is like kind of the way you carry yourself, right? I mean, the one thing the margins are so thin for what's going to separate you, no matter whether it's getting a scholarship at a Division I school, getting drafted, it's even thinner, right? But like, how do you stand out? And you don't want to stand out in the wrong ways, So like going about your business and, a lot of the time, especially out here, I mean, you could be the big fish in a small pond, right? And, you may be really good, right? And as I said, this past year on Long Island was, tons of talent, right? Oliveto, Stroman, Frusco, a ton of guys in the Catholic League, Luke Lang, Jack Durso, like all these guys got scouted, and all of them could have gotten drafted and, signability stuff, whatever. But they were really good. And like a lot of guys around here, Jaden Sterling's a great example, right? And Jaden's going to have a great college career and he's probably going to get drafted here in a few years. But, it's like you go against a guy like that and you're like, man, like this kid's so talented and so good. And why didn't he get drafted? It's like, well, there's a lot of really talented players across the country, right? Yep. And, as much as you may think you're great, sometimes you're not, and like, we see the whole country, right? Like from my position. So, we stack you up, we pref you out, and, it's kind of where you are. But yeah, I mean, anytime you're going out there, it's just kind of present yourself the right way. Go in there like you have something to prove. I mean, we always want to see guys that have a chip on their shoulder rather than somebody who's complacent and feeling comfortable. And, it's kind of more of a life mentality, right? Just kind of the way you attack things and, just never get complacent. And, if you get the opportunity, you're getting looks, like, go out to the camp, and the one thing you can always control no matter what is your effort, right? And it sounds like something that everybody's heard since Little League, but go out there, run when you're, play your hardest, show effort and show like, and show something that like, even if you're not the most talented guy heading in there, that you can bring something that's going to be contagious, and that's energy, right? And that's what any coach out there is looking for, and that's what we like. We want to see somebody that's having fun out there playing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we say it here at VSP is effort and consistency are going to equal outcome. And, at the end of the day, sometimes just doing little things, can really add up to, a really big opportunity. All right, so we're talking a lot about the draft. Now, take us behind the scenes, right? You're in your draft room. Like, what does that look like? What's going on? Just so our audience can kind of get an idea or a feel of like what that would look like.
Yeah, so it's it's weeks of meetings kind of leading up to it, right? Like getting everybody together and sorting through it, and then you have a board, and it's maybe not the traditional board where you think about it, where it's 300 names up there stacked. Every team does a little bit differently, but
so it doesn't look like my fantasy draft at all.
No, not necessarily, but kind of. Like it's funny now. Like when I first started, it was kind of traditional with magnets. Now everything's digital, and we have an app and everything, and it's all these smart boards where everything's up. But like we kind of have it the way we do it. Like it's kind of structured, it's kind of not. But yeah, I mean, once you're in there, it's no different than anything else. You're sitting in there and waiting. Now, you'll have some talk with agents and stuff behind the scenes. Sometimes we might know the picks that are coming up, with how it's going to work. But yeah, it's controlled chaos. Is probably the best way I can put it. And you're kind of you're at the mercy of the other teams. I mean, that's still the thing. You can love a player, but if another team takes them, there's only so much you can do. So, but yeah, it's fun in there. I mean, on draft day, it's kind of it's especially the first day of the draft. There's probably 100 people in the room, from all different parts of the baseball operations department, and you got your decision makers at the front, and then kind of your secondary support, kind of around it, and for somebody like me, when you're in the draft room, it's just be ready to be on call, and if they ask, hey, call an agent or get a signability number on this guy, or figure out, hey, is this kid gonna go? Like, you just got to be ready and try to help, Kip Faggs, our director, and try to put him in a position where he can, make the best decision when we're on the clock.
No, I hear you. I mean, take me a little bit further on that. So you're talking about, signability and, talking to the agents. What are those discussions like between you and the agents? Like, how do you figure out if, they're agreeing with what you're saying?
Yeah, so it's kind of like going back first. So like the baseball draft's unique, right? It's not like the NFL draft and the NBA draft where it's like hard slotted numbers. So like there's still a negotiation that goes on our behalf. So just to use round numbers, let's say the slot is $5 million for our first round pick. We don't necessarily have to give our first round pick $5 million. We can spread that out and give it to a different pick. And there's some strategy behind kind of how you manage your draft and how you build it out. So the most important part is trying to figure out, all right, what will this guy sign for? And then you add on the other element and the other layer, which is that we can draft high school players. Now, high school players have more leverage than a college player, right? Because, a college player is most guys aren't eligible till their junior year. If you go back for your senior year, then you have no leverage whatsoever in terms of a signing bonus, right? But a high school kid, you can leverage to say, I'll go for 3 years to college and hope I make more money, and, especially with NIL and everything now. So like it's all different. So, we all of us area scouts, all scouts, we have relationships. We know all the agents, for the most part. It's pretty regionalized, so a lot of like the same guys have the same players up in this part of the country. And, it's just kind of a working relationship. And, you try to be honest with them. Hope that they're honest with you. It's always kind of a give and take in terms of information, right? Because you don't want to show your hand too much, and then you can get burned that way too. So I think it's just kind of more or less trying to build out relationships, and some kids too, it's getting to know the family. That comes with the makeup part on our end, is kind of knowing what the background is. Like, all right, do we think this kid wants to play baseball? Number one, do we think he wants to sign? And kind of just piecing it all together and figuring it out. And sometimes it's straightforward, sometimes it's not, and sometimes, an agent or a family might, for a high school kid especially, they might put out a number that's way too high, and we may like them, but there's no chance that we could take them at where it is. And more times than not, those guys end up off draft boards, and then they're wondering why they weren't drafted at the end of the day. It's like, well, your value wasn't consistent. We're not going to take a guy that, because what happens too is if we take a guy, we lose the money. If it's inside the first 10 rounds, we'll lose the slot associated with the pick. So it's a big game of chess, and it's a huge puzzle in trying to fit it together. But yeah, the signability part and, navigating all that. I mean, it's the most stressful part, but the closer you get to draft day, the agents are talking to all 30 teams, right? So they have a pretty good idea on what their market is. So it's not like you're playing poker and you got the one guy who's going all in randomly on like these guys for the most part have a pretty good idea on their value, and they know that we have a pretty good idea on where these guys sit. So, it comes together in the end. It's a little game of poker for a little bit, but.
Now, talking a little more about the draft before I jump into the next part, do you agree with the format of the draft? How much it's changed now since was it a few years back they changed it?
So the COVID year, so it used to be 40 rounds. The COVID year they bumped it down to 5, and then after that they settled on 20. It's kind of, unfortunately, it's not going to change, right? I mean, I wish that there were more rounds. I wish they didn't cut levels of the minor leagues. But what I think's happened now is that, I think there's been a shift not only on our ends, on agents' ends, and probably on some families. It's never been harder to get into professional baseball now as a player. There's way less opportunities. It's a hard roster cap. So I think you've actually seen more high school kids try to get in now. Because it's one of those things where in the past you'd almost be like, yeah, I like it, but I'm going to go to college and try to up my stock, or the opportunity's still going to be there. No matter what, even if you got the same signing bonus, whatever it was, the opportunity's still going to be there. Where now it's not a given, that it's going to be there. So I don't know. I mean, to answer your question, no, I don't like the fact that the draft is, less rounds and whatever. But unfortunately, it's only going to probably continue to go that direction and not go back the other way. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I get it. But all right, pivoting here a little bit. Let's talk to our parents here, because we have a lot of our VSP parents that listen. If you're trying to give them advice on what that average 12U kid should be doing right now, and obviously very, very small percentage of them will play professional baseball, but what advice would you give them in terms of travel baseball, all the training, kids have their strength and conditioning, they have their private hitting coach, they have this, they have that. There's just, it's so diluted, and a lot of parents don't know where to look. But if you were to just give some advice on how you would approach maybe your child one day, attack baseball, what would that be?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Pretty much the way I would say it is, let your kid go out there and play multiple sports, train, do whatever you got to do. But, I really wouldn't specialize until, probably junior, senior year of high school. We like guys that play multiple sports, that get that experience. In terms of the travel baseball landscape, I mean, it's a cash cow. I'm probably working on the wrong side of things. Should have started up a travel program. But I don't know. I would just be cautious and proceed with caution when it comes to all that stuff. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to grab, it's money grabs more or less. I mean, if they're running a business, they don't really have the outlook that they're trying to help your kid. A lot of these programs that have, whatever it is, 12, 14, 16, 18 teams, the structure of it, typically the way it works is, the 14 teams under the top two are paying for the top two teams to go, and, I think like they'll sell the false illusion that you're going to get a scholarship, you're going to get this, and then you're spending thousands of dollars every weekend traveling down to Georgia to go play and hotels and flights and whatever it is, so like, yeah, when the time comes, and you're going to know if your kid's good, right? Like more times than not, you're going to know. And there are, as you advance in high school and you get older, like, yeah, once you become, 16U, 17U, like, yeah, then pick your events, get on a good team and, go to the events. But like from our side of, like, from the professional side of things, we're not going to scout a high school kid until his senior year of high school. So that summer leading into his senior year, for the most part. Like, if you ever hear that there's a scout at your game when you're a freshman or a sophomore, they're not there to see your kid. They're there to see whoever, somebody on your kid's team or somebody they're playing. Like, there was a kid this year, and I think he was in Connecticut, and he's throwing, mid-90s or whatever as a freshman, like super talented kid. Huh. And, you start getting calls like, hey, there's scouts coming to this kid's game. And I'm like, guys, there's no scouts going to this kid's game. Like, I hate to break, I don't want to be the bad, we'll see him in 3 years, hope he's healthy,
Well,
but
that's healthy,
But yeah, I mean, I would, if you have the means and you want to do it and you want to travel and you want to do it, go ahead. But, Oliveto is a great example, going back to him. I mean, he did not play on the circuit at all. He played locally. I mean, and he played a million sports, and yeah, he didn't get discovered really until last fall, but he got discovered and he went 34th in the draft, like, if you're good enough, we're going to find you. In terms of what you're doing to get seen, everybody has different things, right? Like, so more times than not, like 98, 99% of the people were, the parents of your athletes, it's about getting their kid to college, right? And getting an opportunity there. And, more times than not, you go out and play locally. I see all the schools out here all the time. If you're playing at, over at Lasorda, you're playing at any of the town of Brookhaven fields, you're, playing at any of those perfect game tournaments in Staten Island, like, all the teams are out. The Division I's, D2s, D3s, even the JUCOs, they're all out there. So, I don't think you got to go crazy and, in terms of spending a ton of money to go down south and do all that, because, I mean, more times than not, you're not going to get the looks from those schools, man. The kids down there, like, they're more physically advanced. Usually they're older. That's the other thing people don't understand. With school starting 2 months, pretty much 2 months, a month and a half, 2 months later than it does down south, is the age gap. A lot of these kids that were drafted out of high school and, down south, they're almost 19 years old. We're up here, you get a lot of kids that's a lot closer to 18. So that year of, as you very well know, I mean, that year of age development and, what it could look like at, 17 compared to 19 is significantly different. So, you're not going to stand out down there, right? But like, we have an understanding of that on our end, and, it's not about what you are today, it's what you're going to be.
Yep.
But yeah, I would just proceed with caution, and definitely don't like the guys who are just playing baseball from the time they're 5th, 6th grade. You're going to put a lot of mileage on your arm, no matter what you're doing, and I don't know. I mean, I just think that's why you see a lot of injuries. And, it just seems to get younger and younger for TJs these days.
Without a doubt. I mean, this sport is plagued by injury. I mean, I think that almost every athlete, baseball player in particular, that walks in here, they talk about how they want to protect their arm. Arm care, and I think it is so important. But a lot of the times, like the catalyst is just the volume, the frequency at which they're throwing. I mean, it's too much. Which brings me to another question on this. But what are you guys doing? And this may be a better question for Connor. But what are you guys doing in order to prevent these crazy injuries?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the $1 million, probably $1 billion question, based off the industry itself. But no, I mean, there's tons of research going on behind the scenes and trying to figure out and pinpoint all right, what's the cause of all this? And for the longest time, everybody growing up, it's like, all right, don't throw curveballs in Little League, right? Like this is what's gonna, and it's the fastballs, right, that are actually the stress that it's putting on the ligaments and everything. And you look at it now, I mean, kids are throwing harder than they've ever thrown, not only in the big leagues, but you go down all the way down the line. Everybody's throwing harder, so it's just kind of managing, workloads. We have, so every pitcher who's in our organization has their own individual plan. So we obviously monitor innings, but we're monitoring stress, we're monitoring workloads, and there's built-in deload programs throughout, and we put guys in our lab multiple times a year, so we're able to kind of see how their body's working, and I don't know. It's we just try to manage it the best we can, but you've seen it a lot. I mean, pitchers are throwing at the highest level; they're throwing less than they ever have before, and guys are getting hurt more than ever. So, it's almost like the give and the take, right? It's like, all right, well, yeah, we're going to reduce your workload, but what happens is they just end up throwing at more intent for the shorter bursts that they're going at, and then ultimately that's leading to more stress and guys getting hurt.
No, it's. Unfortunately, I don't think it will ever end. It's just a matter of trying to do our best to mitigate it, right? I mean, that's all we could do. But next part, so talking about our summit. So, again, which is going to be November 22nd here at Victory Sports Performance. What could a parent expect to get out of it, from listening to you speak? Like, talk about what, your topics.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of detailing some of the things we've talked about is just kind of lead you through what the process is like from our end, right? Because I know the end goal, the dream for everybody, right, is they get looked at professionally, right? So I'll run that through, kind of what that is and what we're looking for and what it actually takes to get there. Just kind of going through the travel ball, circuit, and all right, what should you be doing for your kid to put him in the right position? I would say really a lot of it is what we've discussed here, but. More or less too is just being available, obviously be hanging around after if anybody's got any questions, specific to their kid or their situation, be happy to answer them. But yeah, no, I think it's a great thing with what you're doing, and, getting a bunch of people together from baseball that come from different walks of it. And, it's a game that, it seems to be another spike in popularity from, maybe where it's been the last 10 years. And, the travel programs and the summer circuits are, in full wave. But, just kind of what you pointed out too in terms of like injuries and, just get the college recruiting process and everything like that. Like, I don't know, it's just there's so much information that you can take in. And, I think like where it's advanced from where it was when I was growing up playing, right? Like, I mean, the amount of facility, there weren't facilities like this, like around. There weren't baseball facilities the way it is. And like where it's, where I think the gap has been bridged from where it was, all right, everybody in the South or Texas or California, that's where the baseball players come from. Go look at the signing bonuses and look at for high school kids up here, and then go look at where a lot of these college guys, where they're getting drafted, where they're originally from. A lot of them are from up here. So I do think like all the advancements and everything, and from my experience and working in a bunch of different departments within baseball, being pretty locked in on what obviously the amateur side is between all the high school games and knowing the college scene and recruiting and all that. So just more or less kind of hit on a bunch of different things, and hopefully bring something to light that maybe they didn't know. And as I said, if anybody's got any questions afterwards, always open to having a conversation.
Nice. We really appreciate that. I think the parents will find a lot of value in hearing you talk. I think not only will be interesting, but for maybe there's a few players that will potentially go down that route one day, and you'll be watching them. But to finish off, give us maybe an experience you've had. Whether it was, before college, maybe it was high school, college, at some point during one of your internships or, starting jobs or whatever it may be, that has made you who you are.
Man, I feel like everything, right? Like kind of leading into this, but, a singular moment would be tough.
Anything.
Yeah.
Could be anything.
I don't know, man. Like I'd say just kind of overall, just, like nothing's given to you, right? Like, I didn't play baseball at the highest level that you could. I don't come from an Ivy League school that's, come with a big time coding background or anything like that. Like for me for guys like me and Connor, my brother, it's the same way. Like to get into work in baseball, it's super tough. And like I think what's kind of guided me to get there is just kind of the love for the game, but also the work ethic piece. And like this is what I love, this is what I want to do. And to kind of get through that, and I'd say to get to where I am now, like a lot of what I look for in players is I kind of look for bits and pieces of myself, because I know what I had to go through to get to where I am today, and the effort that it takes and the hard work and everything like that. So I don't know if there would be like a singular, type moment, but I do remember like first starting, when talking to teams, there was some sentiment with that where it was, all right, yeah, like, hey, you know your stuff, you're really good, like, but hey, you didn't play at this level, or you didn't, or it'd be great if you went to Farmingdale State College, and you did this and that, and I guess just kind of taking some of that underdog mentality and kind of going about it that way. But
well, it's funny. I remember back in the day, I'd find you on your computer reading every single morning, and I was like, wow, like this guy cares. You know what I mean? He wants to know anything that's coming out, whether it was through Yahoo Sports or ESPN. Or any of the idiots on the radio that we used to listen to, whatever information was coming out, you wanted to know it, why it happened, and what that means to the future. And I think right from the get-go, you were somebody who you wanted to take your knowledge of the sport, especially baseball, because I know you used to do with all the other sports, to the next level. And I can say I'm proud to call you a friend, and I'm excited to see you grow, and hopefully maybe one day you'll be a GM or something greater. We'll see.
Hey, we'll see. You just take it one day at a time.
Exactly.
But I mean, that's what the whole thing is, right? I mean, hope's for the unprepared, right? And that's the old slogan. And I think preparation is key. And just putting yourself in a position, to make yourself the best you can be is like, no matter what it is, like whatever opportunity comes is, just be ready for it. And I think like looking at this place, I mean, I was telling you, I mean, this facility is awesome, and everything you got here and everything you're doing. And, you look at all these kids and, just kind of coming up and, as I said, the way you're going to stand out is the way you conduct yourself, the way you carry yourself, and, just the effort piece and what you can control. And, if you really want to go play it, whether it's college, the Division I, Division II, Division III, or eventually, pro ball and whatever it is, like these guys, they're wired different, and if you're going to get there, you gotta be willing to put in the time.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think I took up enough of your time. We appreciate you coming on to the VSP podcast. And again, if you're around Saturday, November 22nd, 9 a.m., we will be hosting a Long Island Baseball Performance Summit. We're going to be talking to parents, coaches, players all around the area, trying to educate you to understand the ins and outs of baseball, how you should approach it, so it's in a safe, fun way.